Us tonight. Welcome to the 2021 annual general meeting of the Ontario Alliance of Climbers. We're going to try and keep it brief, but we've got a lot of stuff to cover. I'm going to just click through. So the OAC, if you're just joining us for the first time or just getting familiar with what we do, we are a nonprofit organization of volunteers that work with landowners and land managers to secure and manage climbing access to climbing areas across the province. We're made up of a board of 6. We have 2 co-chairs and each person involved is also a director, so a total of 6 directors. And yeah, I'm not going to get into too much detail about who we are and what we do. We kind of covered a lot of that during the last town hall, and I recognize a lot of names here, so I'm sure people are very familiar. But of course, if you have questions, you can always throw them into the chat below. I'll just ask, as far as ground rules, that everyone is kind and respectful in the chat. We will not tolerate any sort of harassment or offensive language of any kind, and that would be grounds for immediate removal of any participants who do so. If you have questions, you can please throw those into the Q&A. So if you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see chat and Q&A. So chat is really just for casual discussion between attendees, and we've got board members in there as well, and other volunteers who are participating in the chat. And if you have specific questions that you would like to have answered, please put them in the Q&A section, which you can see just to the right of the chat functionality. And that will give you a chance to have your questions answered. We will answer questions a little bit along the way as they come up, if it makes, if we can fit in the time, but we will also set aside time at the end of this presentation to answer specific questions that we weren't maybe able to cover during the course of today's presentation. So we're going to start the meeting off with the formal portion of today's meeting, which covers us for our requirements for our annual general meeting. So that part is very structured and not maybe as exciting, but necessary. And we really value everyone's participation in that process. So thank you again for that. Next, we'll move into our 2021 OAC Service Award. The presentation of an award for an individual who has helped the OAC greatly over the course of the past year. Next, we'll go into access updates, and those updates kind of run over the span of 2020 and 2021 based on when our last AGM happened. And then we'll get into how you can get involved. So we get a lot of questions about what people can do, so we'll talk about that. And then finally, we'll end it with the Q&A portion. So I'm going to kick things, or I will pass things off to, I believe, Mike, to start the formal portion of the meeting. So, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Mike Penny, and I am a director and co-chair of the OAC. And as Casey has said, we are thankful for everyone who's attending today's AGM, and look forward to getting through this short formal section and getting to some updates afterwards, as well as a Q&A after that. So bear with me as I go through this. So on behalf of the OAC's board, I would like to welcome you to the 10th annual meeting of members of the OAC. We have a short formal agenda this evening, followed by some updates and a Q&A session, as I've already said. And I'm now going to call the annual general meeting to order. I will act as chair, and Jeremy Fortier will act as the secretary of the meeting. I will also appoint Casey Wilson to act as the scrutineer for the meeting. The notice calling this meeting was sent to each director and member of record of the OAC by email on August 31st, 2021. There are present in person or by proxy at this meeting 5 or more members. Accordingly, quorum is present and the meeting is duly constituted for business. To expedite the formal part of the meeting, I would ask that members hold any comments or general matters until the Q&A session at the end of the meeting. However, if there's any comments specific to motions prior to the vote, members should feel free to make them aware to us as appropriate. I have the meeting minutes from last year's annual general meeting. and these can be examined at any time. Unless there is an objection, I will dispense with the reading of the minutes from last year's meeting. And the reason being is that these are publicly available for each of you. And if you hadn't either attended the meeting last year or read through those prior, they are available for you now. So again, unless there's an objection, I will dispense of the reading of the minutes. All right. The first item of business is the presentation of the OAC's 2020 audited financial statements. Copies of these financial statements are available for members who would like a copy. We have made a link to the financial statements available in the chat for this evening. So I can't see the chat at the moment, but hopefully someone's doing that as I speak. Unless there's an objection, in the interest of, again, speeding up the meeting, I will dispense with the reading of the auditor's report. Josh, our treasurer, is present and is available to answer any questions that you might have. However, again, these are available. If you ask, we can send you a copy.
There's no objections. Yeah.
No objections?
Nope, no comments in the chat.
Okay, great. At this point, the other co-chair, Randy, will be the chair for the next portion of the meeting where we elect directors. So I will turn it over to Randy. Randy, you're on mute.
Thank you. Much better. Thanks, Mike. So now we need to proceed with the elections. First election of the directors. There are 3 director positions that are being voted for. I'll make all the nominations that the board is aware of. I would like to nominate Mike Penny, Casey Wilson, and Jessica Best to serve as directors of the OAC. 3 directors elected will hold office for 2 years or until their successors are elected or appointed in accordance with the bylaws and the Corporations Act. All of these nominees are qualified to be directors under the bylaws and have consented to act as directors. Are there any further nominations?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, so as there are no further nominations, I declare the nominations closed. May I have a motion that these 3 nominees are elected as directors of the OAC?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so the bylaws provide for voting short sentence to the meeting is by teleconference. I will ask for objections or absentations.
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, so then I declare the motion carried.
Great. So I guess I will take over now for the election of the co-chairs. The bylaws and the Corporation Act of Ontario require that any chair be elected by the members by special resolution. The board has proposed that Randy Kielbasevich and Mike Penny be re-elected as co-chairs of the board. This motion must be passed by special resolution, that is, a resolution passed by at least 2/3 of the votes cast at this meeting. May I have a motion for the special resolution of Randy and Mike as the co-chairs?
I move.
May I have a seconder?
I second the move.
Okay, and I will now call for a vote on the motion. The bylaws provide for voting by show of hands. Since we are meeting by teleconference, I will ask for objections or abstentions. And I don't see anything in the chat, so I will declare the motion carried. We'll next move to the appointment of auditors, and I'll hand it back to Mike Penny.
All right, thank you guys. Yes, so the next item of business is the appointment of our auditor, the appointment of Peters Brown LLP as OAC's auditor. Peters Brown LLP is the OAC's current auditor. Can we have a motion to appoint Peters Brown LLP as the auditor for this year, 2021?
I move that Peters Brown LLP be appointed as the auditor of the OAC and authorizing the board to fix their remuneration. Remuneration.
May I have a motion second? The motion seconded.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the motion. Since we are meeting by teleconference, I will ask for objections or abstentions.
Nothing in the chat.
All right. I declare the motion passed or carried. Just so I am clear, each of the members that are attending today do have the option of unmuting themselves and either objecting or abstaining, correct?
They can, or they can indicate that in the chat.
Perfect.
By text. Yep.
All right. Motion to amend bylaw to permit meetings by teleconference. So the next item of business is a motion to amend the OAC's bylaws. I think we have a portion of the presentation that outlines this change. So I can't see the presentation at the moment. If we could just flip to that.
It is up on screen.
Perfect. We have been using emergency permission granted by the province of Ontario to have members' meetings by teleconference during the pandemic, and would like to make this an option permanently. The motion is included on the shared presentation, which you now see. Can we have a motion to amend the bylaw?
I move that we
I'd like to
amend
Yeah.
All right, I hear two people. So one of you can move to amend the motion, the bylaw, sorry. And
Go ahead, Pat.
The
Yeah,
other,
I'd like to make this motion.
second the motion, please.
I will second the motion as it is much more convenient than meeting in person.
There you go. Okay. Great, thank you. So I will now call for a vote on the motion. Since we are meeting by teleconference, I will ask for any objections or abstentions. We will wait for a moment. All right, so I declare the motion carried. Is there any other business to be brought before this meeting?
So all members, again, you have the option of writing something in chat here or raising your hand if you prefer.
Keep in mind that we will move into a portion of the meeting after this very formal portion where we will discuss many things, including the everyday updates that we will provide, as well as the Q&A portion afterwards. So if there's formal business, please bring it forward right now. I can't see the chat. I assume that there has been no updates.
There's no updates.
All right. All right. So that concludes the formal portion of the AGM. Thank you for attending. May I have a motion that this meeting has been terminated?
I'll make a motion.
May I have a seconder?
I second the motion.
We can now move on to the next portion of the meeting. Thank you guys, and thanks everybody for bearing with us.
Woohoo! All right, great. So we see in the chat, there's just some requests for financial statements and bylaws, and those will be posted. If it doesn't end up in the chat tonight, we'll certainly get them posted when the recording of this meeting is posted as well. And we are recording, so we will be able to do that for everyone. Okay, now we've done the formal part, and we would like to take this next moment to recognize a very important volunteer with the OAC. And I don't think Dustin is actually able to join us tonight. I thought I saw his name in the attendee list, but maybe I didn't. But we would like to present Dustin Johnston-Jewell with the 2021 Ontario Alliance of Climbers Service Award Dustin has been with the OAC for quite a few years now, and actually was the individual who formally set up our social media and brought the OAC into the digital landscape, I think sometime around 2016. So we're a little slow on that, but Dustin propelled us into digital media, which has been really great for us, especially as we kind of deal with the challenges of working through a pandemic. So we're very appreciative for that. But Dustin's work of late has been focused very heavily on Campton or Cave Springs Conservation Area. And Dustin has developed fantastic relationships with the team there, with the land management team, and done a lot of work in terms of helping them do an ecological assessment of the cliff, getting them set up on ropes and harnesses and everything to do that assessment. They are certainly moving towards allowing rock climbing. They have a climbing management plan that is being reviewed for the end of this year to be put forward, in hopes that climbing will be allowed there in the coming year or two. So we still have a little bit of a hill to climb there, but we are getting very close, and that is absolutely thanks to the very hard work that Dustin has done. So we all wanted to just say thank you so much, Dustin. We're thrilled that you're part of the OAC, and we hope that we get to keep you around for a while. And I don't know if any other board members wanted to mention anything. Please go ahead.
I would just like to add that while Dustin was the creator of our social media today, and for a very long time, Jessica Best has been, I don't know what the word is, instrumental in supporting us in that capacity. And I think we would be remiss not to mention, at least I'm very thankful, and I think the rest of the board is very thankful for all the help that she's provided along the way. So thank you so much for that. And I guess bonus points for anyone in the chat or any attendees who can tell me what route that is.
Are you gonna tell everyone now that they've had a chance to guess?
I will give them a little while, and then I'll let them know.
I think, one last thing is, like, Dustin, if you've met him at the cliff, he's just a great ambassador for our sport, and just an all-around great person. So it's great to have him around. Oh, we have a winner. Christina's World. There you go.
That is correct.
We had another guest for
Congratulations, Anna.
Will Tam guessed Bionic Space Boy. Sorry, Will. All right. So next we'll go through our 2020 and 2021 updates. Again, these last couple of years have been unfortunately quite challenging with the pandemic that continues to persist. I don't know if any of us guessed we would be here at this point, but we are. But we've been able to make progress on a variety of things. And while we don't have an extensive list of access sends, we have a lot of work in progress that is moving in the right direction. And we're pretty excited to share some of that. There's also been some challenges, but I think we all feel quite optimistic about where things are at. So as far as 2021 and 2020 are concerned, we've continued throughout the course of this pandemic to provide our climbing community with ongoing COVID-related updates, and remain in touch with our land managers and landowners to ensure that we're addressing any concerns they have that come up. So that's something that we've continued. We've also tried to increase communication using newsletters and town halls. We also experimented, if you were able to join us in the last town hall, we experimented with a Crag-specific discussion. So in our last call, we discussed a few areas, including Rockwood, Campton as well, and some others, where we gave specific profiles of those areas and their access history and updates on the portfolio progress or challenges that we've faced. And I think, we'll probably continue to do that kind of thing. I think we all felt that it was really helpful to share that information with the community. The other piece that we have been working on is a tiered membership. So we've been working through tiered membership planning to add to our $5 lifetime membership. We've had quite a lot of people who've reached out to ask how they can contribute more to the OAC financially, and we want to be able to give people that option, but we also want to make sure that the value is there beyond just the access work we do. So we want to give people an extra thank you if they're able to provide a greater financial contribution. And we've been looking at doing that through a tiered membership system. So that's something that's been, that planning has been ongoing for the last year or so, and we'll continue to work towards that. The next thing is the OAC survey refresh. So as you all know, we've done an annual survey for quite a while, and the questions have largely remained the same, which has been really beneficial to see changes in the data and changes in climbing behavior and in our climbing community over time. But we've been looking at doing a refresh to see if there are other questions that we should be considering asking or new information we can gain in order to help our continued access work. Recently, the Alpine Club of Canada Toronto section invited the OAC board to join a presentation about Indigenous petroglyphs, petrographs, and so we did do we did participate in a meeting with a great presenter by the name of Lynn Gell on ancient traditional symbolic literacy forms. And over the last year, the last 2 years, we've had a treasurer by the name of Josh Leti Jamu, or Josh LJ, as he likes to go by. And Josh has been with us and helping with things like preparing financial reports and updating on the status of OAC financials. And we've been really grateful for Josh's help. He basically dove in head first, and he has been extremely helpful. And unfortunately, Josh no longer has the time to be able to assist as treasurer any longer, though we hope that he'll stick around at least a little here and there because we've enjoyed his presence. But with Josh leaving, we will need to look for a new qualified candidate to fill the role of treasurer. So we will mention that again when we talk about how people can get involved. But if you have financial expertise and you're interested, please do reach out. So I just wanted to say thanks again to Josh for all of his hard work. Really appreciated having you around. You've brought more than just your financial expertise to the OAC. You've always participated in OAC discussions, our monthly meetings, and you always bring a unique perspective. So we really appreciate that, and thank you. The next portion of this presentation, we'll get into Crag-specific updates. So I know people probably have quite a lot of questions when it comes to specific Crags. If you do, again, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I haven't seen any questions populate in there yet. So if anything does come up, we will try to keep an eye on it and ensure we answer your questions. First, I just wanted to give an update on the Niagara Glen. So we did meet with the Niagara Parks Commission. If you're part of the Niagara Glen Conditions Facebook group, which I kind of manage on the side, I did put a call for questions from the community, and people had lots of questions about forestry work, seeing lots of downed trees in the Niagara Glen, and spider trails due to people getting lost, and also wayfinding for hikers, so signage issues and people kind of losing track of the trail system. And I did bring up all of those things. I will just reassure everyone, and I think I had mentioned this previously, but the forestry work, so the down trees or the fell trees that you've seen throughout the Glen, are largely due to an invasive species attacking the ash there, but also a combination of trees that are of a similar age dying off at the same time. So, and I also asked during that meeting with the NPC about the river boulder access. We've got a lot of questions from people about the river boulders, and those will be boulders in the Oz River area, the Bizarro River area, and Water World. And unfortunately, those boulders are going to continue to remain closed due to water safety issues. I did ask if it would be possible for for climbers to be allowed to be in that area if they have a valid permit, but unfortunately, the concern is just that hikers may follow climbers there, and it generally just doesn't set the example they need, because there has been an unprecedented number of rescues in the Glen, due to people thinking they're going to go swimming by the water or hiking down by the water and accidentally slipping in. So it doesn't look like we're going to get access to those boulders back. Maybe things will change. Maybe signage may help. I'm not sure, but I think at this time we just need to be patient and follow the guidance of the NPC. I asked them about enforcement as well, and they did advise that different enforcement officers in the Glen may treat things differently. So you may get different answers from different people, but I think in general, we should just assume that we're not supposed to be there. The next thing is Calabogie. So we had the team from Calabogie reach out about some safety concerns there. They have a great team called the Ottawa Crag Care Group, and they are largely responsible for managing and overseeing climbing related concerns and issues at Calabogie. Their team reached out to ask for some help with signage, and we were able to provide them the signs that you see on the right side of the screen here in the image, just to advise hikers not to be throwing things over the edge due to hikers and climbers below. So we were able to fund some signage for their team, and they got it all installed and everything, and we were happy to help with that. The other piece we've been doing is helping just do a little bit of knowledge sharing with regard to some liability concerns that have been brought up by the landowner for part of Calabogie. So we're kind of working through that right now. So that's an ongoing process, but we're happy to try to help them where we can, and excited to see that there is another group of individuals in the Ottawa Crag Care team who are taking it upon themselves to be such great ambassadors for climbing. The next piece is for Ontario Parks and Lions Head. Mike Penny, I'm going to pass that over to you.
Sure. So as many of you are likely aware, we had some challenges in the early part of the year with regards to Devil's Glen, and some concerns from local homeowners or a homeowner, as well as recently, on the eve of the Olympic debut of climbing, Ontario Parks chose to send a warden to the park and remove climbers from the portion of the cliff that resides within the boundaries of the park. So we have, on September 3rd, myself, Randy, John Vallone, met with Ontario Parks in an effort to not only discuss Devil's Glen, but also to open a dialogue with Ontario Parks and in good faith build a relationship and attempt to collaborate as we continue to grow as a user group. So I think it's fair to say that the time has come for for us to be legitimized as a user group. And for us to have an ongoing and working relationship as we have with many other land managers across the province. So as I mentioned, on September 3rd, we met with them. Overall, these are my comments. I feel that the meeting went very well. We have plans to meet with them on an ongoing basis throughout the course of this year and next. And we had some great discussion and some great ideas as a overall team on where to go and what our objective should be as a team or as the OAC and Ontario Parks. So more to come on this, but I will say that in my view, and I think I will pass it over to Randy if he wants to add any additional comments, as well as John Vallone. I will say that we have a bit of a hill to climb in terms of policy. So Just to recap, in the early spring, we met with a homeowner and discussed some of the concerns that were brought to our attention. We actually reached out to the homeowner, hearing concerns from or hearing interactions with climbers at Devil's Glen. We discussed parking, trespassing, waste, dogs, as well as camping on the portion of the property that is not within the park boundaries, but is actually scheduled or potentially scheduled to be amalgamated into the park land. Unfortunately, in transparency, our efforts to work with that landowner did not go very well. We made, we made a communication to the climbing community that we should be on our best behavior, as well as some amendments to parking. And I have to say that I am personally very proud of what I saw at Devil's Glen in terms of the climbing community really rallying together and making those changes. So I want to say thank you very, very much for that. Now, the recent activity at Devil's Glen as it pertains to sending a warden was, again, the result of a homeowner escalating her concerns with park staff. Unfortunately, the regular park superintendent was on vacation. Her concerns or their concerns were escalated, and as a result, we saw a park warden at Devil's Glen. So Ontario Parks has reassured us that their policy with regards to climbing has not changed at Devil's Glen, and that therein lies the problem. So I will shut up now and pass it over to Randy and John if there's any additional comments with regards to Ontario Parks.
Thanks, Mike. The only thing that I would add is that there's going to be a time in the future where the OAC will ask for engagement from the climbing community. And we do have an opportunity to move the needle insofar as climbing, at least as insofar as climbing in provincial parks is concerned, and potentially as well with conservation areas. But it's going to be a multifaceted and not short process. But there will come a time when the board's efforts will need to be supported heavily by the community. And that's the only way we can get things done. But in an effort to dangle a carrot, as it were, the potential stakes are huge for climbing, or access to significant new climbing areas. And I think it's definitely worth the effort. That's what I'll say.
Okay. The last piece to update here is with regards to a change recently at Lions Head pertaining to parking. So you may or may not have seen that Lions Head has this year put in place a parking program in an effort to try to deal with the giant influx of primarily hiking activity to the lookout. And overall, I think that it's been a good program. However, it hasn't come without its hiccups and its inconveniences for us as well as a community. All of that is to say that recently the change that has been instituted is a 4-hour parking limit at the McCurdy parking lot, which is the closest parking lot to the Lions Head Lookout, and resides sort of midway to the end of Moore Street. So if you plan to visit Lions Head, though the season is wrapping up next year or this year, you will have to make a reservation if you plan to park at McCurdy parking. You can either make a reservation 24 hours in advance and park all day. It will cost you $30 to do so. Or if you have purchased a residence pass, which I believe is $100, then it will be free for you. So there is some incentive there to purchase a residence pass if you plan to visit regularly. The alternative, if you do not book 24 hours in advance, is a 4-hour time slot, which I should not advise you, but could actually be booked back to back for an 8-hour period. So those are your options. Aside from that, there are shuttles that run from the arena to the McCurdy parking lot, which is now the trail entrance, or you can park at the school, which is an additional, I don't know, 10-minute walk, maybe less if you walk fast, for again $30 and park there. Or you can attempt to find some free parking somewhere else in Lions Head and again make the longer walk. So that's the update on Lions Head parking. I'll be honest with everybody. I think that I think personally we will likely see some updates over the course of the winter to address some of the learnings that town and the municipality has had over the last year. But I don't anticipate that paid parking will go away.
Okay. Yeah, I will move to the next slide, and we're good with that.
Yeah, I just looking in the chat. I think Celine is on here, and she just made the point of indicating that you don't need to be a resident to get a residence pass. So yeah, good correction. Thank you, Celine.
Great. Other updates. So Cave Springs, or Campton, as the climbers often call it. There's continued work on the access guidelines there. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Dustin Service Award. So there are guidelines that are being reviewed right now, and Dustin and Mike Makashuk, I believe, also assisted in the ecology study there, and helping their team do that. So that is in the works. I would say we're probably, and this is just my estimate, and Dustin can correct me later if I'm wrong, but I think we're probably still a year or two away from legitimizing access there. One exciting note is that they are looking at expanding parking. So there hopefully won't be parking issues upon the opening of the climbing there. The next piece is Cow Crag. So we just wanted to reinforce that the crag status at Cow Crag is unknown due to the unclear ownership of the actual cliff face. However, the OAC has clarified trail access property ownership, and we've also gone down the path of trying to explore alternative parking options, admittedly with not much success. The good news is that the trail or the road access from the bottom of Dublin line there is not private property. It is private property if you take that road access and then head left directly to the bottom of Cow Crag. So if you want to access the unknown crag, you must ensure that you're staying on the actual road access and accessing the cliff from the top. Randy, did you want to add something there? No? Okay. So you may have seen the homeowner sign that you can see on the right here. So this was posted at the bottom of Dublin line. This is the homeowner, or we believe it is a local homeowner who has added this sign. This is not a city sign. I think that's clearly evident, but it is not in fact trespassing based on the property lines that we've been able to dig up. So somebody want to add something? No? Okay. All right, I'll move on. Crag Y. So as you've probably seen, some people are aware, Crag Y is a cliff adjacent to Crag X. It's climbers' right of Crag X. The OAC is aware that there has been new development at this closed crag over the course of the past year. It's important to know that this land is on lease to the quarry by Conservation Halton, and climbing is still not permitted there or at Crag X. So I just wanted to mention we're aware of it, but the status of both Crag X and what is being called Crag Y is that it is a closed cliff. You should be aware that climbing there does have the potential to affect the relationship with Conservation Halton, and you could be fined for trespassing if you're caught climbing there. I think it's important just to be aware of that. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that because we have been receiving questions about Crag Y. Anything to add, board members? Okay. Metcalf parking, Jess and Randy, did you guys want to pipe in on that?
Jess, why don't you start?
So as everyone knows, parking at Metcalf has been a bit of a gamble in terms of space and getting there. And we do recognize the fact that having a bigger parking lot would be ideal for climbers, as well as the general population. Randy can speak more about plans to possibly grow that, but we do want to get some input from you as a community as to whether or not you would be willing to support funding an expanded parking lot. So I'll let Randy, if you want to just speak about what possible plans could look like.
Right, so I mean, everyone is aware of the situation, not just at Metcalf, but I'd say throughout Southern Ontario. And again, I know we've said this in the past, but it's important to reiterate that the parking regulations that have been popping up do not target the climbing community. It's a response to a massive increase of people venturing into open spaces. It doesn't mean it's fair, it doesn't mean that we agree with it, but that's the reality. So we do have some opportunities to address parking situations. I've been in contact with the MNRF regarding specifically Metcalf. Essentially, there is a plan in place to expand the parking area to approximately double the size, which is not huge, but it's certainly better than it is. There are several hurdles to address, the least of which would be zoning, which would be a municipal issue, and then getting the plan past the NEC, the Niagara Escarpment Commission, which is a whole other ball of wax. So as is the case in Ontario, there's multiple levels of bureaucracy that have to be addressed. But the real question, or the fundamental question from an OAC perspective is there an appetite for membership to donate and to raise money and to fund the building of a parking lot at Metcalf with the foreknowledge that you cannot hold those places for the climbing community. The parking lot would be open to the general public, and there's no mechanism in place that we could limit X amount of parking areas just for the climbers. And that's a question that I think we need to, I think we're going to formally ask of the membership. Is that right?
So we could hold a formal poll. Casey, if you feel good launching like a poll in here, we could get a sampling of how many people would be for or against that. But if we can also just launch that out on social media
Right.
after the meeting's over.
Okay.
Yeah, let's put some thought to it and do it after the meeting,
Sure.
sometime this week or next.
So essentially, that's the question. And I think I just want to be clear that this question in the immediate future is dealing with Metcalf, but there's an implication for future projects because again, parking has become such an issue in many areas. And I don't see that issue unfortunately resolving itself. I think there's going to have to be some solutions found. That's it for me.
Okay, we'll move on to Turtle Crag. So I think we can all agree, Pat, if you're here, we're all pretty excited to announce that Turtle Crag is moving towards a reopening. We have been working through a permit system. Pat has done a lot of work on that permit system in order to prepare for a reopening. I think something that's really important to convey as we work towards a reopening is that this is like, basically we have one more shot. Turtle Crag was open at one point, and due to noise, off-leash dogs, waste, etc., the homeowner, the landowner, asked that we do something about it. It was becoming an issue, and Turtle Crag was closed down. So we have been in close discussions with the landowner and working through this permit system in order to try one more time to see if we can reopen it, and hopefully have sustainable climbing at Turtle Crag that is not disruptive to the landowner. Anyone
Yeah,
wanna-
so let me just say, I think we're within weeks of being able to reopen the Turtle, and it is super important. This crag is in the landowner's backyard, and any noise you make, the landowner will hear. He's cool with us climbing. You will need to get a permit. Just do not make any noise. Don't leave figurative or little crap. And I hope we can keep this open.
Yeah, what's that beginning of that Eminem movie where they say he's got one shot, one opportunity? I kind of
This
feel
is
that
it.
way about Turtle Crag. We have one opportunity to make this right. I really hope that we are able to keep Turtle Crag open, and to be the third person to emphasize it, it is definitely primarily noise that is the concern. So you may just have to keep your beta to yourself and let your partner struggle a little bit. And that's okay. They're going to learn some lessons along the way.
And send in silence.
As what I don't know if I'm supposed to quote Don Cherry anymore, but as he would say, pretend like you've scored before.
As Tyler said, we will need to rely on the community to keep everyone in check. And so that includes having perhaps challenging conversations with your friends if you see them doing something that they shouldn't be doing at this very delicate crag.
For sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
Definitely no Bluetooth speakers.
No.
So yeah, so keep an eye out, guys, for an announcement coming soon. And thank you, Pat, for putting together our permit system. Really looking forward to seeing that in action, and looking forward to seeing people back out at the Turtle.
Someone asked about a price for the Turtle permit. There will be no fee. It's really just it's an honor system, permit system, to ensure that we can manage the number of people that are there. Overcrowding obviously leads to more noise, and so we need to be careful to manage how many people are going there so that noise can be kept to a minimum, and that the homeowner is satisfied. We have to remember it's private property. We have no recourse if the homeowner decides to disallow climbing. So it really is a one-shot deal. Someone else asked if there'd be policing or friendly reminders. We do have signage that's going up at the Turtle. However, the OAC is not an enforcement body. We will not be out policing. I think we can only ask that the community keeps each other in check, and we remind each other about good climbing etiquette and behavior at the cliff. And that's really all.
We have a question here with regards to the number of, okay, Pat's already answered. Thank you, Pat. We will be capping the number of participants at 12 per day.
Yep.
I don't remember if parking at that parking lot is free or not. So we are not making any statements about the parking.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen, I'm not sure what your question means, but no, it does not link to public health. Okay, so Conservation Halton, Randy, can you jump in? And Mike Makashuk, I think you also had an update there regarding working with Burlington Fire. So I'll pass it over to you, Randy.
There's really not much of an update. I know that the park is still actively trying to work on a day pass system that allows for more time. Again, this is another situation where climbers are being wrapped up into the rest of the park users, and it's problematic for the climbing community because obviously a 2 hour or even a 3 hour window is not sufficient. They do recognize this, and we are putting pressure on them to change and to acknowledge and adjust their system for climbing. I suspect that next season there will be something in place that will allow people to spend the day climbing on the properties. I also suspect that by next year, all their properties will be open again to climbing. So I mean, they pretty much are right now with Nemo and Rattlesnake Point and Buffalo Crag, but I think there'll be more time allotted for climbing. That's pretty much it for me, Mike.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Yes, hello, everyone. Just to keep you updated with the Burlington Fire emergency trails. Burlington Fire has been working in communications with the OAC on a volunteer day where we will be passing out that information and asking on people to volunteer to come out and maintain some of the emergency trails that they have, particularly at Mount Nemo. If you've been to the Crag, then you've seen the letter and number systems on the wall as well as on the trails, and these are in place to help Burlington Fire in case of emergency. So we'll keep you updated on when things move forward, and we'll be able to call out to the community and get some volunteers. And that's pretty much it. So looking forward to that date. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Okay, last one on this slide is Rockwood. So we have been in discussion with the Grand River Conservation Authority to reignite access discussions at Rockwood. And so we actually met with them in June of 2021 with the help of a climber by the name of Jordan Baker. We were able to make some connections to their team. And also Matt McCormick and Janie Midges also jumped in to help with this portfolio. It's a very challenging portfolio. There's been a lot of work done on the Rockwood portfolio over the years, and we unfortunately get stumped with it each time. There's just not a lot of desire to actually allow rock climbing at Rockwood. So it does continue to be a closed crag, but we have continued to try to move the conversation forward with the GRCA in hopes that we may be able to come to an agreement of some kind. This is definitely would need to be a long-term thing, and it's not looking like we will gain any sort of access anytime soon. They really have expressed a lack of desire to introduce any new activities there. So as I said, it continues to be challenging, but we continue to try to push for what we can. So thanks very much to Matt McCormick. I don't think he's here tonight. I think he had a prior engagement, but we're really appreciative of him jumping in and bringing his energy to the portfolio, as well as Janie Midges, who was a previous volunteer with the OAC on the Niagara Glen portfolio and has lent a little bit of her time again recently. So we're very appreciative of that. And it's not an easy one. So it's easy to, Rockwood is a challenging portfolio, and it's easy to get a little bit down about it, I guess, but they continue to bring positive energy to that. So no major updates there, but just wanted to fill everyone in that we have been in discussions with the GRCA again. So how can you get involved? Everybody asks, how can we get involved? What can we do? Well, I mean, we always say become a member. That's definitely important to us. It continues to be important to us. The OAC, it gives us credibility when we can say we have connections to a volume of climbers across the province. It gives us credibility, and it shows that we are a unified community with shared interests. So it does give our voice a little bit more weight when we have more members. So that's certainly always going to be an important piece. I mentioned earlier that we are looking for a treasurer. So we are seeking a qualified candidate for the role of treasurer. If you have financial experience, we would greatly appreciate that, even more so if you have experience with a not-for-profit. Next, we're looking to connect with people all the time. Well, we've got lots of people in the group who are volunteering actively. We sometimes need a little help building more connections. And so if anyone any of our members have connections to anyone in Grand River Conservation Authority, Ontario Parks, or even the Ministry of Natural Resources, please reach out. Like we would love to build our network, and we would greatly appreciate any help that anyone may be able to offer. Even if you have contacts who are maybe municipal councillors, that would be beneficial to us as well. Any line of connection we can build is beneficial when it comes to access discussions. The last thing is see something, say something. If you're at the cliff and you see something that's, not right, or that could be harmful to access or even unsafe for fellow climbers, please say something. Like, again, the OAC is not an enforcement body. So, we're not out there policing cliffs, nor do we want to be out there policing cliffs. We really want the climbing community to be a self-guided community, and it's really up to all of us to ensure that we are, we're being responsible and respectful and respecting the spaces we're in when we're out there. So if you want to get involved, like, one of the best ways you can do it is every time you're at the cliff. And then just a couple small reminders. There have been some things that we've got word of. So just a few things, etiquette wise and rules wise. Just a reminder again, like, drones are not permitted in any Ontario parks or conservation areas without special written permission. And that's often only granted for people like ecologists who are studying the land, et cetera. So you can pretty much assume drones are not permitted for recreational use in any Ontario park or conservation area. I would add that they can even be very disruptive to fellow climbers. So just keep that in mind. And then noise and language, this is going to be really important, especially when it comes to the turtle. That we are mindful that we're not being too noisy or using offensive language really loudly. I actually just recently ran into a couple at a cliff, and they mentioned to me that they heard someone screaming the F word at the top of their lungs.
Sorry, Casey, were they non-climbers?
Yeah, they were not climbers. This was a couple. They were out hiking in a space that climbers also hike in. And they had mentioned that they heard someone screaming the F word and that the person appeared to be stuck, i.e. they were cruxing out in the middle of a route. But the couple thought that the person needed a rescue because of the screaming and the swearing. So we just need to be really mindful of the impression that we're giving other people, because the last thing we need is like unnecessary emergency services calls going out for this kind of thing. And the last thing is just toilet paper. There's like a lot of hikers and climbers out in the world, and everybody has to go from time to time, but please just be mindful. If you're using toilet paper at the cliff, you either need to pack it out or you need to be sure that you're burying it at least 6 to 8 inches underground. So just something to be mindful of, and also just be careful of the trails. You don't want to be going on trails. You really want to make sure that no one else has to see your waste.
So I just wanted to say that when I go to climbing areas that are not visited by hikers or the rest of the public, I'm actually amazed at how great the majority of the climbing community is.
Oh, for sure.
Limiting their impact on the area. And I think the climbing community as a whole deserves a pat on the back, if you would. And a lot of the challenges that we face are not necessarily from our own actions. And that's something that we're working to change. It doesn't mean that we can ignore best practices, but I just want to be clear. I know that sometimes I get the impression that the OAC is wagging the finger at people, and we should. I mean, we do have to all, carry on doing best practices. But again, I'm amazed at how good we actually are when I go to places like Devil's Glen.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Randy. I think these are good reminders, but let's not let that sink in too deeply to suggest that we're out there and making too much excessive noise or littering or the overwhelming majority of climbers, at least in my view, and I think the view of the rest of the board, and probably many of you who are attending this meeting today, is that climbers have a pretty high respect for the places that they inhabit. And overwhelmingly, at least in my view, a lot of climbers are actually picking up after others, whether it is other climbers or whether it is hikers or other user groups. And I think that goes a long way as a user group, as a community. And I think we need to just continue that awesome behavior and keep those places that we like to recreate as pristine as we can. We're going to have an impact. We're definitely, climbing has an impact, but if we work together, we can mitigate the impact, and we can be stewards of the land.
Yep, I agree, and I'll say too. I mean, certainly the land managers or landowners that I have had the relationships with, they have overwhelmingly said that climbers are an ideal user group. So I think that's absolutely true. Like, these reminders are for so few people, I would say. It's just, unfortunately, it's like if it's one person and they go however many times when they're out at the cliff, then it becomes very visible. So I think it's just like being mindful of that. I think you're totally right, Randy and Mike. Like, climbers are overwhelmingly an ideal user group. I mean, I think it's easy to see when you go to a place that is shared, like the Niagara Glen, to see endless amounts of Tim Hortons cups and water bottles and broken glass and fire pits. Like, that's clearly not rock climbers. So, unfortunately, oftentimes we are judged by our bad apples in a way that other communities are not necessarily judged by their bad apples. And I think that we certainly should be accepted with our bad apples, just as other communities are. But, as a community, like, I think we can always improve, and we can always, just give ourselves those gentle reminders. So, but I agree. I think overwhelmingly people are great. It's just a few things here and there, and a few people here and there need reminders, or just haven't learned these things yet even. So
yeah, I think it's worth noting, and we've talked about this a lot in the past, that climbing is growing exponentially, and there isn't always necessarily the mentorship or the guidance that we might have enjoyed in our younger years. And so the idea of seeing something and saying something is not to scold, it is to assist, and it is to help. It is to, lift others up and to help them out. So.
Great. Okay, well, with that, we will open it up to the floor for any final questions. I think we've answered most of everything. If anyone has anything that they wanted to ask, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, we're rounding down. We'll give everyone a second.
And we think people, like participants, can ask questions by unmuting, right?
They'll have to raise their hand if they want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, or they can ask questions in the chat.
Yeah,
Yep,
they can.
or in the Q&A. Preferably ask them in the Q&A, simply because it could get lost in the chat if lots of people are asking questions or typing in the chat. Definitely the Q&A is the best place to do it. We have Aaron Murray who has raised their hand. Aaron, I'm going to try to allow you to talk. Hopefully it works out. I'm going to just do that now. There you go. So Aaron, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to ask your question.
Thank you, Casey. Yeah, I'm just, I wanted to ask you guys if you have anything to share on sort of any thoughts or like vision you have as to, as you start raising more funds, what the OAC might look like in 5 or 10 years.
Who wants to take that one? Do you want me to take a stab at that? Sure.
Go for it.
So thank you for the question. That's a great question. I can provide my own my own view on where we might go, and others might want to pipe in as we go along. So in my view, unfortunately, we live in a time where money talks, and the model in which the OAC has been acting or conducting ourselves over the last however long needs to shift. And I think it takes some funds and some capital to do that. So when we talk about assisting as it pertains to additional parking, when it comes to being able to offer our partners a permit program, funds will help us in that regard. In some small way, you can look at what we will launch at the Turtle as something that we may be able to leverage elsewhere. So a lot of the feedback that I hear and we hear from land managers is that they want to understand climbing and they want to work with us, but they may not necessarily have the capacity to do so from a funding perspective. They may not understand fully how to integrate climbers into those areas. And if we are able to provide them with a turnkey solution, then we may have a better chance of allowing climbing in some of these areas. Nothing comes for free, and certainly some of those things are going to require some funds to do so. It is a bit bold to suggest as well, but I will suggest it anyway, that perhaps down the road, if we were able to get enough support and enough capital, we could do something that we were successful at doing at Old Baldy, which is facilitate the purchase of some land. So, Ontario, before anyone gets too excited about that, Ontario is rather complex and different than other provinces in the sense that many of the areas that we enjoy recreation have been sold off to private land or are owned by park reservations, reserves, etc. And so it is a little complex, but that hopefully gives some window into where we might put our funds. And certainly, again, just speaking off the cuff, I think that we would want to hear from you in the community as to where and how we spend that money. So I'll pass it on to anyone else who wants to comment.
Liz mentioned in the Q&A, she was just asking about Crag infrastructure, so maintaining access ropes, building platforms to solidify ledges, etc. So I think John Vallone is with us and he'd probably have a lot to say about this, but if I'm to throw in my thoughts, I think the OAC has stayed away from things like this in the past because there's liability concerns. Unfortunately, Ontario can be litigious, I suppose, at times. And so the OAC has stayed away from building structures for climbing purposes or installing access ropes and things like that.
As well as providing technical knowledge.
Yeah, we don't provide guidance either, or guiding at all. So I don't see that changing, but I'm not sure. Again, this is something John Vallone would probably want to weigh in on. I don't know, Randy, did you have any thoughts on that? I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I don't want to put you on the spot if you have nothing else to add, but.
I do have things to add about that as well.
I mean, I can jump in briefly, Pat,
Let's
just to
listen
go.
John.
Yeah.
So climbing is dangerous, and we're all kind of expected to undertake our own risk assessments and do the things within our control to manage and mitigate those risks. And as an organization of volunteers, the OAC is not very well positioned to start trying to manage and mitigate those risks for our entire membership. We are not super well funded. The membership model at $5 a head doesn't generate a ton of cash. And so you'd have to buy insurance for all of that stuff. And it's just a whole bunch of upkeep would be required. That is, I would say, a bit outside of the scope of what the OAC is capable of doing at this stage. Pat, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, my take on it is that I think, okay, so first of all, some people who develop crags may also develop infrastructure, but we don't know about that. Like we officially know nothing about that. The other thing, which is more germane, is that I think a lot of it would be up to the landowner. And I think if that is a conversation where the landowner would be willing to lead the process of putting infrastructure, and sometimes they do that, right? I mean, there's this big staircase at Rattlesnake Point, right? We would be happy to talk to landowners about doing that, but I think the OAC as an organization doesn't own land and is probably not the best organization to start the work of putting in more access infrastructure. Other access orgs do this, but they also exist in different contexts as well.
Right. And own land. I think that's a great point and a really important distinction. Like when we look at what, for example, I mean, oftentimes people want to compare the OAC to the Access Fund, and we are a fraction of the size of the Access Fund, but we also don't own property the same way that climbing organizations do in the US. So you know, as you said, Pat, like it's just really not even an option for us. We certainly would be willing to help, but it's not, we don't own the property. So it makes it challenging for us to be able to do that. Yeah.
I just want to interject that a lot of people compare us to other areas, BC, Alberta, the States, whatever. And like simply put, we're not other areas. Our challenges are extremely different. Our bureaucracy is extremely different. And for a myriad of reasons, our solutions have to be different based just on that criteria alone. So making comparisons between, you know, when people say, well, out west, you know, they clean rock and it's not a problem and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. That's great for west. But unfortunately, that's not Ontario. But we're working to address our limits or our limitations put upon the climbing community within the context of our regulations. That's what I would say.
What else? Okay, so we have a question. Is there any update on the hangars at the Latvian ledge? Randy, I think you were going to answer that.
Yeah, so I mean, the situation with Lions Head or any of the provincial parks, or in Lions Head's case, it's provincial nature preserve. We've just entered into some high-level discussions with park management at a level that's above the park managers. And so at this time, I think it would be in everyone's best interest if we were to hold off on making any changes to that area. Lions Head, as we all know, is viewed from park management. They scrutinize it. That's not to say things won't change in the future. Hopefully they will, quite frankly. That's what we're working towards. But I think at this time, the best thing to do is to keep the conversation focused on climber access and not on climber impact.
Okay. Any other questions? I think everything's been answered, it looks like. We'll give people one final moment.
Let me just throw in a thing. It's like we try to have these events and try to be accessible to people, but we're also always open for feedback and your thoughts. So, you know, if you want to talk about what the OAC is doing and we're not specifically having an event, send us email or reach out to us on Facebook or whatever, and we are happy to talk about what you think the OAC should do, or ideally how you can help the OAC to achieve better access for climbing in Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I see a comment. I just see comments about the OAC tabling again at gyms. And I think that's something that we definitely would like to be doing again. It's a challenging time to do that. I'm aware that, yeah, Matt McCormick is doing shoe demos right now. And I'm not sure about what gyms are agreeing to that. Some gyms I've talked to have said that they are preferring not to do tabling right now because they only can allow so many people in the facility at a given time. And so allowing people in who are not paying customers is not as desirable for them right now, but perhaps that will change. And maybe that has changed. So maybe it's time for us to reach out again. I will just say, like, I'll reinforce, like, certainly we would like to be out and connecting with people more often, but it's important to remember that the OAC is not, it is not in our mandate to introduce people to rock climbing. So we certainly want to connect with new climbers, but we've had people ask us about hosting events where we're teaching people how to climb or bringing people out to the cliff. That is not something the OAC is going to be doing. That's not part of our mandate. Our mandate is really around the legal access to climbing areas. So it's really not about introducing new climbers to the sport. We certainly want to connect with new climbers as they enter the sport, but we are not an organization that focuses on teaching people how to rock climb. We just don't get into technical instruction at all. So I think that's everything. I don't see any other new questions. So if your question wasn't answered, I think we covered everything off. But if for some reason it was missed, or you didn't get a chance to type it, or you're watching this recording after the meeting and you have some questions that come up, you can please do contact us via email or social media and send us your questions. We'll be happy to answer them as quickly as we can. I know people have asked for financial statements, and I believe we posted the link, but we'll probably post that link along with the link to the recording of this video in the next week or so, or next few days. And I think that's it. So I wanted to say thanks again to everyone who has, set this hour and a half or so of their evening aside to join us. We know it can be a little bit administrative to join the AGMs, but we appreciate the chance to kind of hear from everyone, hear your questions, and get a chance to address them. So thanks again to everyone, and we will see you at the next meeting.